and Craig Smoke.
Jed Drenning, West Virginia Sideline reporter analyst, does an incredible job covering not just West Virginia, but also the Big 12, and he joins us on 365 Sports. Jed, I mentioned this earlier in the show, and Craig and Paul got a copy. Garrett, I think, too, what you sent us, that synopsis or preview with all of the data and stats and stuff with the Big 12 is like just unbelievable. Thank you for sending that, and we'll get to some of that in just a moment. Last year, West Virginia had a chip on their shoulder, deservedly so, and they had a tremendous run. What did they use to fuel themselves this year?
Unfinished business. I don't think anybody's going to be happy with finishing in the middle of the league or slightly above it, fifth, sixth, being selected toward the middle of the league in the preseason. Why wouldn't we be? Really, there's no hardware to show for what we did. We got a nice bowl trophy out of it, but nothing to speak of from a conference level. So as we enter into what's expected to be a fiercely competitive Big 12, I like to think that our roster is put together in such a way as if we stay healthy, I've said this many times, there's no reason to believe that we can't be playing very meaningful football late into November and hopefully in early December.
Jed, offensively, this is a group of wide receivers that's maybe flown under the radar a little bit. People talk about the running game. Garett Green, improved his passing last year. Do you think that the skilled players that are not in the backfield are getting slept on a little bit?
Potentially, but there was really no reason to get that wowed by them last year. I mean, when we gave those guys touches, we had some talent. It was young talent, as you talked about. Devin Carter was the senior spokesperson for that group. He's gone. So it was a bunch of freshmen, and we had to try and devise ways to get them the football, create ways, manufacture ways to give them their touches. And Neil and the staff did that. Now the hope is this year, what you're going to see is a lot more organic, and they can be getting their touches just in the natural flow of the offense. That's what we're hoping to do, because we're high on the talent that we have. Plus, we have a couple additions in that receiver room that we're really high on. We think that we have the personnel there to do it. We finally have this combination of length and speed in that room, and burst and twitchiness and all those things that it takes to win in this league. So it's just a matter of going out and proving it. Last year, we didn't do that much with it. They took advantage of the select list of opportunities they had, but once again, it wasn't in the natural flow of the playbook or the offense. That's what we're hoping it looks like this year. Garett Green drops back, he plants his toe, he scans the field, and whoever happens to be open is a weapon that can make something happen with the football once they get their opportunity. That's what we're hoping it looks like.
Quarterback-wise, I think you would probably agree Garett Green may be one of the more underrated players, not just in the conference, but maybe even nationally to some extent as well. Not sure if you agree with that or not, but in terms of the quarterback position, Nico Marchiol as well, getting the amount of playing time that he did last year, obviously a very highly heralded recruit. Just what did you see from him a season ago, and how can he also help contribute along with Garett Green this year?
Well, let's start with Nico, and then we'll go to Garett. Nico did exactly what you want your number two to do, and then probably more than that. He came off the bench stone cold in the backyard brawl, really managed that football game, helped us beat Pitt, upset all three Panther fans. So that was a big win for us. And then the next week, Texas Tech came to Morgantown. And when Texas Tech came to Morgantown, that was a program that for the longest time had our number. And so Nico got the start against Texas Tech. Once again, managed the game, superintended what we were doing offensively, didn't get us beat, and found a way to help us win 2 football games. That's what you want from your backup. Now, I do think this offseason you've seen Nico take a step. So if he gets opportunities this season, he will be doing more than managing the game. I think the staff's more comfortable with allowing him to push the football downfield, which that's really what this offense is set up to do. Punch in the mouth with the run game, go downhill, then go play action and take your shots. So I think that Nico is probably in better position to run the offense that way now. And Garett, we're really excited about Garett, but I do think that he is almost ideally positioned. I like the fact that a lot of people are sleeping on him. You don't get any credit for any W's with preseason hype, right? So I like the fact that they're talking about all the other quarterbacks. And this league has so many to talk about, whether you're talking about Arizona or Colorado or Utah. There's so many high-level, high-functioning quarterbacks in this league. So I like the fact that he's not being talked about. There are certain elements of his game that need to be polished and refined. He spent the offseason mechanically with some of his lower body mechanics. He has a personal quarterback coach down in Alabama with quarterback country that he's worked with for a number of years. Neil and the staff have a lot of faith in that crew. So I think since January, it's been a long-term project. There were some things off mechanically last year in the middle of the season that the staff recognized, but it wasn't a short-term 1-week fix. So Neil decided, hey, let's play the long game with it. Let's get to the offseason, address some of these things like throwing to his left, some of the intermediate throws. His footwork was unsound. So we worked to address that. I tell you what, in my podcast that I do with Owen Schmidt, we did a 2-episode breakdown of Garett the runner. We did some film study, dove deep into the numbers, and then Garett the passer. And I would encourage people to hop on our YouTube site at In the Gun and check out what we did with Garett Green, because a lot of folks back here are really excited about it. There's so much to talk about with Garett.
I know this may not seem like I guess I'll just ask it. Is Garett Green's toughness sometimes a weakness?
Well, Neil struggles with striking that balance, Smokey, and it's strange you touch on it. He said, look, we don't want to change who he is. He's a junkyard dog, and you don't want to completely say, whoa, 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 and back him off, because his nature is kind of his strength. But to your point, it can also put his body in harm's way. And his body is slight, 201 pounds, 5'11", 201 to be soaking wet. So that's the style and nature of what he does. And he'll jump right up and get in a linebacker's face, 40 pounds bigger than him. So he's not afraid. He's not going to back down from anybody. Now, what that does, it has this effect across the offense that when the rest of the offense sees him doing that, they feed off of him. It energizes them. It's infectious. It really is. And they're picking up what he's putting down. So, yes, Neil wants to be smart about it and coach him to not put his body in harm's way more than necessary. But at the same time, you can't change who he is, because that's what makes him unique and special and different. The fact that he is willing to lower a shoulder. He had 14 missed tackles forced. And among quarterbacks in the Big 12, that was the most in the league. When you watch him in the red zone, guys, that's one of the reasons he's such an asset, such a weapon, because he's willing to become a physical runner once you get inside the 5 and push the goal line. So don't want to take it away, but these are also the reasons that we're always telling Nico, hey, better be ready.
Yep.
Jed, C.J. Donaldson's, one of those guys that when he can stay healthy, he is, a game controller, a road grader, and all of that. I know they have the plan Thunder and Lightning. Do you feel his injuries were more bad luck, or is this something also that everybody's going to hold their breath about?
Well, part of this is, too, he spent his whole life playing positions other than running back. And it wasn't until he arrived on campus as a true freshman that, stitched of necessity, they started repping him some at the running back spot, first in short yardage and goal line situations, and he became so effective that you couldn't keep him off the field and keep him out of the backfield. So the next thing you know, this kid who's never really played the position, much less tried to master it at a high level, was starting in the backyard brawl against Pitt. So one of the things that CJ has had to learn over his first couple years of being a running back is how to calibrate the blows that you take, how to take care of your body, how to really I'm trying to find the best way to explain this. It's a marathon, not a sprint. When you're taking that many shots at the power forward level, you're taking a lot of hits on your body. And there's certain ways you have to treat your body, certain ways you have to approach how you run the football, and you have to be smart about it. That's all part of the learning process, but part of it's bad luck too. I mean, some of the injuries he just couldn't do much about, but we are excited that we have him back at full strength. He's obviously a much different style runner than Jaheim is. And when you look at the two of those together, I'm not going to compare it to the 1946 Mr. Inside-Outside Army team, but I mean, that's kind of what you're leaning into. Much different structure in terms of the skill set of these types of guys. So Jaheim's much more than a change-up. I mean, you can't really play him the same way that you play CJ, because those two are just offering much different things.
It's an incredible reference, but that's a unique reference never heard on this show before, so I absolutely love that.
Blanchard and David.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Like the talk of realignment always swirls, Jed, and I'm not asking you to get into the weeds of that so much. I was just curious, especially after your mention of Pitt, how much would West Virginia fans love or hate to be in a conference with Pitt again someday?
We would love more than anything what some might consider or others might consider. One man's trash is another man's gold. Well, when it comes to the scraps of the ACC, if in fact the ACC ultimately goes to the wayside, whatever happens with FSU and Clemson, who knows? This is so far above my pay grade, I shouldn't be talking about it. I have no idea. I'm just guessing and speculating. But let's say that the ACC falls apart, and some combination of our old Big East mates, whether it's Virginia Tech and Boston College or Virginia Tech and Pitt and Louisville, we need some travel partners. Let's start with that. The regional rivalries would be unbelievable for us because right now we're the only team in America, guys, that for 4 straight years is now playing 11 Power 5 schools. Because what we try and do is satisfy the appetite of our fans with some regional rivalries. Well, the rest of the Big 12 is being pretty smart about it, playing one P5, one G5, one FCS. We're not doing that. We're playing a couple P5s because of the regional rivalries, whether it was Maryland, then Virginia Tech, now Penn State's our opener, and then Pitt. So from a scheduling standpoint, it will be much easier if at least a couple of those were conference games. So I'm all about it. Like we got on a plane last year, guys, and headed to Orlando to play UCF. I forgot how nice it was to stay in the same time zone for a road conference game. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. Now we go Lubbock, went from being our furthest trip, which is a pretty daunting trip, but it went from being our furthest to what's now our 6th furthest in the conference, potentially road game. So yeah, I'm all for some travel partners, and with Pitt being an hour and 15 minutes up I-79 from Morgantown, I'm all about that. I would love to see us back in a league with those guys. And Virginia Tech and Louisville and on down the line, but that's one can hope.
Go ahead.
I love that he is not afraid to pitch on the inside side of the plate against the Panthers.
And maybe even up and in.
Yeah, yeah. He's owning the zone there.
Jed, if you were to walk into a bar in Pittsburgh near the Pitt campus, or if a Pitt Panther fan walked into a bar in Morgantown, which bar of the opposite fan base is more likely to buy that person a beer?
Well, I would have to say this. If somebody, and let's say it's not Pitt week, okay, and it's just the middle of April, let's say, and somebody wearing a Pitt hat walks into a bar in Morgantown, I think people are just going to look at them askance, like, wait, well, I never see those guys anywhere, much less here. I have a little sociological experiment that I put through. We spend some time up around Pittsburgh and the city around Christmas each year, me and my family. My mom's from southwestern PA, the whole deal. But I have a little sociological experiment. As we're making our rounds to the malls and the stores and the outlets, I ask myself over the course of the 3 or so days that I'm up there, I'm going to count how many Pitt logos I see people wearing. Now, bear in mind, in the state of West Virginia, I can't go 6 feet anywhere in the state. I can't swing a cat by the tail without seeing a flying WV logo. I don't care if I'm deep in the coal field 4.5 hours from Morgantown or if I'm on High Street in the middle of campus. You are going to see flying WV logos everywhere. Anybody that's been around West Virginia can tell you that. So my record in 3 days in Pittsburgh is seeing 5 Pitt logos in 3 days. And I go back to this. Andy Van Slyke, when he played for the Pirates, he famously said, because he was played for the Cardinals in St. Louis, of course, that's the mecca of baseball in terms of fan bases. So they cherish their Cardinals. Well, he came to play for the Pirates in Pittsburgh, and he said, when you play for the Pirates in the city of Pittsburgh, you very quickly learn it's our Steelers, our Penguins, the Pirates. Well, he didn't even mention Pitt. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we have a great, long, cherished rivalry with these guys. I just wish they had a few more fans, that's all.
I love it.
Hey,
I love it.
Jed, tell everybody, you mentioned, is it In the Gun? Is that the podcast you said?
It is, yes. Thank you, Smokey. Shameless plug. It's In the Gun.
No, that's fine.
You can go on YouTube and check it. You can follow us on Twitter at In the Gun Podcast. But like I said, we're really proud. We spent a significant portion of the summer producing these 2 episodes on Garett. And I do it with former Mountaineer Owen Schmidt, the Runaway Beer Truck. I do it with Wes Euler, who works, speaking of Pittsburgh, he calls himself Pittsburgh's foremost Mountaineer fan. He works for the Steelers, but he went to WVU. He's from Mars, PA. same high school as JJ Weatherholt, by the way. But we have a lot of fun with it. In the Gun, check it out anywhere that you get your podcast. But right now with the Garett episodes, there's a lot of graphics. It's kind of graphic intensive with the X's and O's, the breakdown. So there's a lot of that on there. But yeah,
I'd like to ask
just
you then,
subscribed.
the attachment you sent me, which I forwarded to Garett, Paul, and Craig. Is that something that a fan can get a hold of or buy from you? Because I'm blown away by all the information.
Well, not particularly. Because
Okay.
here's what it is.
Okay.
I try and that's what I was explaining in the message. I try and source it where it makes sense. It's basically an expanded cheat sheet or crib sheet
Sure.
that I try and use for broadcast purposes. And so sometimes I'll extract and pull things from Phil Steele, and when I do so, I
Right.
put the Phil Steele stuff on there so you can tell where it came from. It's much easier to have all your information kind of in one go-to source. Now, some of it, like, there's no off season for me. It's a 12-month deal. So what I'll be doing in January, I'm sitting there watching a WVU Hoops game on 360 or ESPN Plus. And as I'm doing it, I'm breaking down CFPstats.com field position trends for every Big 12 team. That's just what I do. I never stop. So through the entire off season, I'm putting material together, looking for trends or nuggets or interesting little factoids. And once I put that all together, I kind of disseminate it to those who might be able to use it. It's always different. Sometimes it's longer than others off seasons, and there's even versions of it that I'll share some of it with Neil. I'll share obviously with our broadcast team. But there's a WVU version. There's a Big 12 version. You guys kind of got the Big 12 version, which makes more sense.
Yeah.
You need the WVU version. But yeah, it's a lot of fun stuff. I mean, there's a lot of metrics and resource sites out there, whether you're looking at Sports Info Solutions or PFF or CFP Stats, sports analytics, that really provide great stuff if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do the work and the heavy lifting to put it together. So that's kind of what I do.
Well, it's a great deal. It's awesome. I did see the part where you said the most recent conference titles, and I might use the nugget on that because it's eye-opening that some have had to wait quite a bit and some have not. Even though, like in TCU's case, their last was a share in 2014, but they played for the national title just a couple of years ago. Stretches of that happening.
Don't let Iowa State hear him complain. They're still waiting.
Oh, I know.
Iowa State's still waiting.
I know. I noticed that.
You got to think Boyd Campbell's had him close, and he's pushing for the envelope again. But yeah, some fan bases have it harder than others. But it's always intriguing when you have so many new faces. It's almost an introductory type element to it. I want to put it in there and make sure that I understand and appreciate the value of the new members. So that's one of the reasons that I do this. It lends some perspective to the greater history of the conference with the changing faces and changing seats in it. So again, there's resources out there that are readily available online. All I do is say, okay, I'm going to take that resource online and plug it right into my book here so I have it all right in one spot.
Were you on the sideline when Baylor and West Virginia had 70-63?
I was, and I just had a staff member from that Baylor staff, a defensive staff member, Cody Alexander, who runs. Cody runs MatchQuarters.com. Cody is just he's a stud. He's a dude. We just had him on our podcast. Speaking of that, a couple weeks ago, and you talk about. He and I just kind of left the host behind and forgot where we were and thought we were in a staff meeting with grease pens in our hand. And we were talking just crazy deep football and the shorthand and all those things. But Cody was on that staff, and he brought that up. And he said, Jed, I thought we were all going to get fired before we got on the bus. I really – but, hey, here's one back at you. I was also on the sideline the next year when at Floyd Casey Stadium, Baylor was up on West Virginia 56-14 at the half.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, I said, look, I don't know what I'm going to see and not see here at halftime, but I want to hear. Keith Patterson was our defensive coordinator at the time. So I'm in the locker room at halftime. I said, I've got to hear what Keith tells these kids. So Keith got up to the grease board. He put the grease pen down, and he told him, he said, look, I can't draw magic up here. He said, you better find some pride because I think those guys want to drop 100 on you. And if you don't stop them, they will.
He's the one that said it was a catastrophic failure, wasn't it? Or a catastrophic result, or how that game. Yeah.
It was one of those games. It ended up 70-40, 73-42, but it wasn't as close, quote unquote, as the score might indicate. It really wasn't. But what made that worse? This was such a nightmarish trip all around. We left and went to Waco Regional to fly out on the charter after that butt whooping late into the night. I don't know, it was midnight, 1 a.m. Who knows? It seems a lot later than it probably was. But we got there, and we were sitting there much longer than we normally do with the 14 buses or the 5 buses. And finally, word started to spread that TSA didn't have us on the flight schedule. They thought our charter was the next day. So they had to scramble a crew from Dallas, get them to Waco, and we had to wait 4 hours for this to happen before finally flying. After trailing 56-14 and losing by 30 at Floyd Casey, we went through this. It was what a nightmare.
Great storytelling. Great stuff. Thank you very much, Jed. Appreciate it. Anytime we can get you on, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Jed Drenning, West Virginia Sideline Analyst, and also In the Gun, his podcast.